Imagine if you were sailing through the Caribbean Sea and all of a sudden you see a ghost ship floating on the horizon. You set course for it, and as you get closer, you notice that it looks like it's been abandoned in the middle of nowhere. There are no people on deck, and there is nothing in the sails that could indicate why the ship has been left deserted. This might seem like something straight out of a horror movie, but it actually happened in real life on December 4th, 1872. What we're talking about is a ship known as the Mary Celeste, which was found abandoned at sea without a trace of its crew. For over 150 years, people have been trying to figure out what happened to everyone on board. But unfortunately, no one has ever come up with a definitive answer. In today's video, I'll be taking a deep dive into the mystery of the Mary Celeste and exploring some of the craziest theories that have been proposed to explain what happened to her. But before we start, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our awesome videos. And if you love mysterious deep dives, then make sure you check out our other content where we publish similar videos. So, let's get started. The Mary Celeste was a commercial sailing vessel that was launched in 1861 in the port of Dundee in Scotland. She was originally named the Amazon and was owned by a man named J.C. Dyer. In May of 1872, she was renamed the Mary Celeste and began making regular trips between New York and the English Channel carrying cargo, including wine, textiles, and general merchandise. On November 7th, 1872, the Mary Celeste left New York for her next journey. She was scheduled to stop in the Azores before heading to her final destination of Genoa in Italy. The cargo on this trip consisted of 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol along with various other goods. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife and 7 other crew members boarded the ship, and they began the journey across the Atlantic Ocean. For a while, everything seemed to be going well. On November 23rd, the captain's wife, Sophia, wrote a letter to her father describing how pleasant the weather had been and how calm the seas were. She also mentioned that they had seen flying fish jumping around the ship and that the crew were all well. It was the last letter anyone would ever receive from her. 2 weeks later, on December, the Mary Celeste was sighted off the coast of Santa Maria, one of the Azores Islands. The ship appeared to be sailing under full sail and seemed to be in good condition. However, there was no sign of the crew, and no one came out to respond to the hails of passing ships. Then just 4 days later, on December, the Mary Celeste was discovered by a British ship called the Dew. She was drifting aimlessly off the coast of Portugal, and her cargo hatches were wide open. The crew of the Dune realized that the ship was completely abandoned. They found a lifeboat on the deck, but it showed no signs of being used, and there were no bodies in or around the ship. All the crew's personal belongings were still on board, and there was no indication of a struggle or a fight having taken place. News of the discovery quickly spread, and hearings were held to determine what had happened to the Mary Celeste and her crew. A court was appointed to oversee the salvage of the ship and her cargo, but they couldn't do anything until the mystery of the abandoned vessel was solved. One of the first things investigators noticed was that the ship itself was in good condition and seaworthy. There was no damage to the hull or sails, and the cargo was still intact. This ruled out many potential causes for the abandonment, such as bad weather, an accident, or a fire. Investigators also examined the ship's logbook, but it only provided limited information. The last entry was made on November 25th, and it simply stated that the weather was fine and the ship was bound for Genoa. There was no mention of any problems or issues that may have led to the abandonment of the ship. The mystery deepened when it was discovered that the Mary Celeste had been scheduled to arrive in Genoa on December, but she was found abandoned almost a week before that date. This suggested that something must have happened suddenly and unexpectedly to cause the crew to flee. With no evidence to go on, investigators began to piece together a timeline of events leading up to the discovery of the abandoned ship. They believed that the Mary Celeste had left New York on schedule and arrived in the Azores on December. There was no indication of any trouble during the crossing, and the captain's wife's letter suggested that the crew were in good spirits. On December, the ship was reported to have anchored in the Azores for water and supplies, but it's not clear whether or not this actually happened. Some believe that the crew decided to abandon ship here due to fears that a storm was approaching, but there is no evidence to support this theory. The most likely scenario is that the ship continued on to the coast of Portugal, where she was eventually found abandoned. This timeline suggests that whatever caused the crew to abandon ship must have happened suddenly and without warning. With no physical evidence to go on, investigators were forced to rely on circumstantial evidence and speculation to try and piece together what had happened to the Mary Celeste and her crew. One of the main theories that has persisted over the years is that the crew had become victims of a mutiny or foul play. This theory is supported by the fact that the ship was found with its cargo intact, suggesting that whoever abandoned the ship had no intention of stealing the cargo. It's possible that the crew could have been killed or taken hostage, but there is no evidence to support this theory either. The fact that no bodies were found and that there were no signs of a struggle on the ship suggests that the crew left voluntarily. But why? There is no way of knowing. Another popular theory is that the crew of the Mary Celeste fell victim to piracy. Piracy was still common in some parts of the world in the 19th century, and it's possible that the Mary Celeste was targeted by a group of pirates. However, this theory does unreally hold up considering that there were no signs of a struggle on board the ship. If the pirates had attacked the crew, it's likely that there would have been some resistance and signs of a fight. A more supernatural explanation is that the crew of the Mary Celeste were victims of a natural disaster, such as a storm, a seaquake, or a waterspout. These events can cause significant damage to ships, and it is possible that one of them could have caused the crew to abandon ship. However, there is no evidence to support this theory either. The ship was found in good condition, and the lack of a storm in the area at the time makes this theory even less likely. Perhaps the most unusual theory is that the crew of the Mary Celeste abandoned ship due to the fumes from the alcohol cargo. Industrial alcohol is a highly flammable substance, and it is possible that the fumes could have become so bad that the crew had no choice but to leave the ship. While this theory seems far-fetched, it's not entirely impossible. The amount of alcohol on board the Mary Celeste was significant, and it is possible that the fumes could have made the crew sick or disoriented, causing them to abandon ship. Other theories range from the practical to the paranormal. Some believe that the crew encountered a giant squid or a sea monster that caused them to flee in terror. Others believe that the ship was cursed and that the crew was doomed to wander the ocean forever. Of course, there is no evidence to support any of these theories. In the end, the mystery of the Mary Celeste remains unsolved, and the fate of the crew is unknown. Despite the lack of answers, the story of the ghost ship has captured the imagination of people around the world. Books, movies, and TV shows have been made about the Mary Celeste and her crew, and she remains one of the most famous maritime mysteries of all time. So what do you think happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste? Was it a mutiny, piracy, a natural disaster, alcohol fumes? Or was there another cause altogether? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. After the discovery of the Mary Celeste, the ship was towed back to England, where it was eventually sold at auction. Her new owner planned to repair the ship and sail her to America, but he never got the chance. The Mary Celeste was lost at sea during a voyage to Brazil in 1885. And this effectively put an end to the investigation. Over the years, many attempts have been made to revive interest in the case and solve the mystery. Books, documentaries, and television shows have all been produced, but none have been able to provide a definitive answer. The case of the Mary Celeste remains one of the most famous unsolved mysteries of all time. And it's easy to see why. The lack of answers has allowed the legend of the ghost ship to grow and flourish. People love a good mystery, and the story of the Mary Celeste is the perfect example. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to check out some of our other videos where we cover similar topics. And if you're interested in learning more about the Mary Celeste, we recommend checking out some of the books and documentaries listed below. Thank you for watching. Until next time.